The Galaxy Council was the oldest and most respected body in the known universe, a place where countless alien species gathered to solve disputes and keep peace. For thousands of years, this council had been a symbol of harmony, where debates could stretch for weeks, and decisions were always made with careful words and thoughtful pauses. Every species that entered the chamber understood the rules. Diplomacy was the only way forward. Strong or weak, every voice was heard, and no one dared break the unspoken code of mutual respect. But then, humans arrived, a species many had only heard of in stories, tales of a young, fierce world known as Earth. Some members were curious, some cautious, and a few openly skeptical. Could humans fit into this ancient, delicate system? Could they learn to play the game of diplomacy like the others? On the first day of the humans' official presence at the council, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. The chamber was a vast, glowing hall that hovered silently in space, filled with delegates from hundreds of worlds. Each was unique. Some floated, others had many eyes, while a few communicated with lights or sounds. They all expected the humans to follow the same path they all had: careful words, cautious promises, and endless negotiations. But as the session began, it quickly became clear that humans were not like the others. Their lead ambassador, a tall man with sharp eyes and steady voice, did not waste time with greetings or pleasantries. Instead, he laid out their demands with blunt clarity. There were no long speeches praising the council's traditions or promises of goodwill. He spoke of boundaries, rights, and consequences with a firmness that unsettled many. Some delegates exchanged nervous glances, whispering among themselves. The humans' approach was unlike anything the council had seen. They refused to bend or soften their words, making it clear they would not accept half measures or vague agreements. When challenged, the humans responded not with explanations, but with firm refusals. "We do not negotiate with weakness," the ambassador said, his voice steady. This shocked the assembly. Diplomacy was a delicate dance here, and humans were breaking all the steps. It was as if they had stepped into a centuries-old play and were rewriting the script without warning. The council's usual patience began to waver, replaced by a mixture of confusion, concern, and in some outright fear. What worried the other species most was the certainty behind the humans' words. There was no hint of bluff or diplomacy in their tone. They sounded prepared to back up every statement, ready to act decisively if their terms were not met. Some delegates wondered if humans had secret weapons or technologies far beyond their knowledge. Others guessed it was their history, a planet forged in countless wars and struggles where survival had meant standing firm and not trusting easy words. But no matter the reason, the humans made one thing clear: they would not be pushed around or softened by the council's usual rituals. As the meeting continued, the humans refused to engage in the traditional give and take. When asked for compromises or suggestions, they responded with clear ultimatums. Instead of offering alternatives, they insisted on their terms alone. This stunned the council into silence several times, a rare moment in the usually talkative assembly. It was like a thunderclap in a quiet room. Some ambassadors whispered urgently to their leaders, fearing what this new approach could mean for the galaxy's future. Would humans upset the careful balance the council had maintained for so long? Could the galaxy handle a power that refused to play by its oldest rules? At the same time, the human ambassador's calm and confident presence made it impossible to dismiss their words as empty threats. His steady gaze met the eyes of every delegate, challenging them to understand that this was not a test, but a new reality. His people had learned the hard way that weakness invited destruction. They had built their strength not through deception or endless debate, but through clear decisions and firm action. To many on the council, this was both terrifying and fascinating. Was this a new kind of power emerging in the universe? One that did not rely on centuries of tradition but on pure will and honesty? Meanwhile, whispers began to spread beyond the council chamber. News of humanity's bold rejection of traditional diplomacy traveled quickly, stirring debates across the galaxy. Some species admired humans for their straightforwardness, believing the council had grown too slow and weak to face the challenges ahead. Others feared that this attitude would bring war and chaos, shattering the fragile peace. Across the many worlds, leaders and citizens alike wondered, what did this mean for their future? Could a species so young and unyielding truly change the course of galactic history? Back inside the chamber, the Council's elders, those who had guided generations through peace and conflict, watched the humans with deep concern. They had never seen such a challenge to their ways. The humans' refusal to soften their stance threatened to unravel years of delicate work. But the elders also sensed something new, a force that might push the galaxy beyond its old limits. Some quietly hoped that, despite the shock, humanity's boldness could bring a new kind of strength to the Council, a strength that might help face dangers the galaxy had yet to understand. The session ended with no agreement, only rising tension and unanswered questions. As the delegates left the chamber, many glanced back at the human seats with a mixture of respect and wariness. The galaxy was changing, and the calm before the storm was over. Something powerful and unpredictable had entered the Council, something that would force every species to reconsider their place in the universe. The question on everyone's mind was the same. Would humanity's rejection of old diplomacy lead to destruction, or would it be the spark that forged a new future for all? The humans' blunt and unwavering stance sent shockwaves through the Galaxy Council chambers that no one could ignore. The calm and orderly atmosphere of the assembly hall suddenly felt fragile, as if a quiet storm had gathered just beyond the windows of the space station. Alien ambassadors who had spent their entire lives mastering the art of diplomacy found themselves struggling to understand humanity's true intentions. Was this sudden rejection of negotiation a sign that humans sought conflict? Or was it simply a new way of thinking, one so different it challenged everything the Council had ever known? Whispers and rumors began to spread like wildfire. In every corner of the galaxy, leaders and spies exchanged stories about human power. Some claimed that humans possessed secret military technologies so advanced they could destroy entire fleets with ease. Others spoke of unpredictable capabilities, weapons, and strategies unlike any other species had seen before. These rumors only fueled the anxiety inside the Council, where delegates began to question if the fragile peace they had carefully built was about to collapse. Behind the scenes, away from the prying eyes of other species, the human representatives explained their reasoning in quiet, serious conversations. Their distrust of traditional diplomacy was not born out of arrogance, but from the harsh lessons of Earth's history. They told stories of a planet where endless negotiations had too often failed, where treaties were broken, and where weakness had led to destruction and suffering. For humans, the usual diplomatic games felt like dangerous delays that only invited aggression. They believed the galaxy needed a new approach, one where strength was not hidden behind polite words but shown clearly and without hesitation. In their view, only strength earned respect. Anything less was invitation to be pushed aside or worse. This belief, deeply rooted in human experience, was a stark contrast to the Council's culture of endless debate and compromise. Within the Council chambers, this difference in thinking created a growing tension that was impossible to ignore. Delegates who had once smiled politely now looked uneasy. Some tried to engage the humans in conversation, hoping to find a middle ground, but found only firmness and little room for discussion. The usual flow of talks, where ideas and proposals were carefully exchanged, was replaced by short, direct statements and clear demands. Many species, used to the slow dance of diplomacy, were unsettled by this sudden change. It was as if a new player had entered the game, one who refused to follow the established rules, and whose very presence threatened to break the delicate balance. Outside the formal sessions, the impact of the humans' stance spread quickly through the galaxy's networks of communication and gossip. In distant star systems, planetary leaders debated how to respond to this new power. Some saw humans as a necessary force of change, a species that could bring order to the chaotic politics of the galaxy. They admired the humans' courage and clarity, believing that their strength could protect weaker species and end long-standing conflicts. Others, however, feared that the humans' refusal to compromise could lead to war. They worried that once a species rejected diplomacy, there was little to stop them from using force to achieve their goals. The old stories of peace, through negotiation, seemed fragile against the harsh new reality the humans presented. Amidst the growing panic and uncertainty, the humans maintained a steady and calm presence. They were not reckless or violent without cause. Rather, they were prepared to defend their principles and interests with unwavering resolve. Their leaders made it clear that this was not a threat to the galaxy, but a new way to protect peace, one based on strength and honesty rather than empty promises. This message was both comforting and unsettling. Some delegates began to wonder if humanity's approach might actually be the key to facing the galaxy's future challenges. Others, however, were convinced that the Council's old ways were in danger of collapse, and that the humans might be the spark that ignited a conflict no one wanted. The Council's elders, wise and experienced figures who had guided generations through crises, found themselves divided. Some viewed the humans with suspicion and fear, believing that their bluntness threatened centuries of peace and could lead to destruction. Others saw potential in humanity's directness, a force that might push the Council beyond its slow, cautious methods and prepare it to meet new dangers. Quiet meetings were held behind closed doors, where the future of the Council was debated fiercely. Could the ancient system adapt to this new reality, or would it have to be replaced by something entirely different? As days passed, the tension inside the Council grew heavier. The usual sense of calm and respect was replaced by an atmosphere charged with uncertainty. Every word spoken was weighed carefully, every gesture observed for hidden meaning. The human's presence had changed everything. Even small decisions now carried the weight of larger consequences, as all delegates watched closely to see how this new force would act next. The galaxy was no longer the same place it had been before humans joined the Council. Meanwhile, beyond the walls of the chamber, ordinary beings across countless worlds felt the ripple of this change. Some saw hope in humanity's strength, believing it could end the endless cycle of broken promises and fragile peace. Others feared that the rejection of diplomacy was a path toward endless conflict. Families, soldiers, merchants, and leaders alike wondered what the future held. Would the humans lead the galaxy to a new era of order and respect? Or would their refusal to bend the rules bring chaos and war? The questions hung in the air, unanswered but urgent. The humans themselves remained focused, ready to face whatever came next. They understood the fear and suspicion they had caused but believed strongly in their way. To them, diplomacy without strength was an illusion. If the galaxy wanted peace, it had to be built on a foundation of clear power and unshakable resolve. And so, as the Council struggled to find its path forward, humanity stood firm, ready to challenge the galaxy's oldest ways and to change the course of history forever. Tensions reached a breaking point when a long-standing border dispute between two powerful alien species suddenly escalated into violent skirmishes, forcing the Galaxy Council to call an emergency summit. For weeks, the chamber was filled with heated debates as representatives argued over the cause and solutions to the conflict. Traditionally, the Council's method was to send mediators and rely on extended negotiations to ease tensions and find compromises acceptable to all sides. However, the humans made it clear from the start that they would not take part in this usual dance of endless discussion. Instead, they shocked everyone by announcing that they were deploying their own peacekeepers, well-trained, heavily equipped forces with a simple directive: no negotiation, only enforcement. This decision stunned the entire assembly. The humans explained that their peacekeepers were not there to talk, but to ensure immediate and lasting order. They would act swiftly to stop violence, regardless of who was right or wrong in the dispute, and would hold the peace by strength and clear authority, rather than delicate words. When the first human peacekeepers arrived at the disputed border, their presence was felt instantly. Unlike the Council's traditional envoys, who had spent months traveling slowly and speaking in measured tones, the humans moved with purpose and precision. Their ships and soldiers were efficient, organized, and prepared for confrontation if necessary. Within days, they intervened firmly in ongoing clashes, separating the two alien armies and enforcing a ceasefire by force where words had failed. The intervention sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Many were impressed by the humans' ability to bring immediate order to a situation that had defied resolution for years. To some, this showed clarity and strength, a refreshing break from the endless delays and broken promises that often followed council mediations. These supporters argued that the humans had shown a new path forward, one where peace was maintained by strength and not by fragile agreements. Yet, on the other side, many saw this as reckless arrogance. Alien leaders and diplomats who had spent lifetimes mastering negotiation viewed the humans' refusal to engage in talks as dangerous and disrespectful. They accused the humans of bypassing the council's processes and threatening the very foundation of the galaxy's unity. For them, peacekeepers who acted without consent or dialogue were not protectors but occupiers, and their actions risked provoking further conflict rather than ending it. The council itself began to fracture under the weight of this divide. Sessions, once united by common purpose, became battlegrounds of opinion, with some delegates openly praising humanity's decisive methods, while others condemned them as threats to galactic harmony. The humans, however, remained unshaken. Their leaders emphasized that waiting and talking had failed time and again, and that real peace required real power. They warned that if the Council could not evolve to meet the new realities of the galaxy, it might soon lose control entirely. This uncompromising stance deepened suspicions but also forced the Council to confront uncomfortable truths about its own methods. Meanwhile, on the disputed border itself, the human peacekeepers continued to enforce the ceasefire with strict discipline. Their presence created a tense calm, where neither side dared to push back for fear of swift consequences. For the first time in years, open fighting stopped, replaced by wary silence. Yet beneath the surface, old resentment simmered, and some alien factions began secretly preparing for the possibility that humans might remain on their borders indefinitely, imposing their will without regard for local customs or alliances. Across the galaxy, news of the human intervention spread quickly. Some species began to reconsider their own approaches to conflict, questioning whether their traditional diplomatic methods were enough to protect their interests. Others doubled down on alliances and arms, fearing that the rise of human power would upset the balance of power and lead to a new, more dangerous era. This first clash was more than a border dispute. It was a test of the Council's future and humanity's place within it. The outcome would shape how peace and power were understood for generations to come. As the dust settled, and the Council struggled to find a new way forward, it became clear that the galaxy was no longer united by shared rituals and protocols alone. The humans had introduced a forceful new element, one that challenged everyone to rethink what it meant to keep peace. In a vast and diverse universe, the question now was whether this force would bind the galaxy together in stronger unity or tear it apart in conflict. The galaxy, once humming with fragile peace and uneasy trust, now teetered dangerously close to chaos as rumors began to spread of an ancient and mysterious empire stirring from the shadows. This empire, long thought to be a myth or a relic of a distant past, was said to possess unmatched power and an insatiable hunger for conquest. Its return was whispered in secret meetings and feared in every corner of space. The news sent shockwaves through the Galaxy Council, shattering any lingering hopes that diplomacy alone could maintain order. Suddenly, the humans, who had long been viewed with suspicion and sometimes hostility, found themselves in a new and unexpected role, a beacon of hope for those desperate for change. Many council members who had grown weary of endless debates and empty promises now looked to humanity's no-nonsense tactics as a possible solution to the growing threat. Quiet alliances began to form behind closed doors between human leaders and alien factions tired of stagnation and failure. These new partnerships were based not on tradition or ceremony, but on shared understanding and urgent necessity. The humans brought more than just boldness. They revealed advanced technologies and strategic insights previously unknown to the Council. Devices capable of detecting threats before they arrived, defenses that could withstand attacks from multiple directions, and weapons designed not for destruction alone but for swift, controlled enforcement of peace. These revelations stunned the Council, forcing even the most skeptical delegates to reconsider their earlier judgments. it became clear that humanity's approach, direct, firm, and backed by superior technology, might be the only way to survive the looming menace. As the ancient empire's forces began to push outward, attacking border worlds and claiming systems with ruthless efficiency, the alliances between humans and other species solidified. Shared training exercises, combined military operations, and intelligence exchanges became common, creating a new front of defense that relied on strength and trust rather than endless talks. The humans, who once stood apart as outsiders, now played a central role in coordinating this response. This shift was not without tension. Some alien factions feared losing their independence or being overshadowed by human power. Yet, the threat of the Empire was greater than any one species, and the need for unity overrode many old rivalries. In these moments of crisis, unexpected friendships blossomed. Ambassadors who once saw humans as brash and reckless now worked alongside them, learning from their strategies and sharing their own knowledge. The council itself changed, adapting to include new voices and new ways of thinking. The old balance, fragile and slow, gave way to a new order that combined humanity's clarity with the galaxy's vast experience. But even as hope grew, shadows remained. The ancient empire's motives were not fully understood, and its technology was unlike anything the council had faced. Some whispered that this force might not be just a conqueror, but a destroyer, intent on wiping out all who opposed. This uncertainty kept the alliance on edge, pushing humans and their new partners to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. In the halls of power, leaders debated fiercely how far to go in embracing humanity's methods. Some feared that too much reliance on force might erode the very peace they sought to protect. Others argued that without strength, diplomacy was meaningless. This tension fueled the Council's transformation, driving it toward a future where strength and dialogue coexisted in uneasy balance. Throughout the galaxy, ordinary beings watched these developments with a mixture of hope and fear. For many, humanity's rise symbolized a chance for survival in a dark time. For others, it was a warning that the old ways were dying, and with them, the peace that had held their worlds safe for generations. As the ancient empire's shadow grew longer, the galaxy stood united in one urgent purpose: to face this threat together, learning from humanity's example, and forging a new destiny in the stars. The question was no longer if peace could be kept, but how much it would cost and who would be left standing when the final battle came. The Galaxy Council, once a slow-moving institution bound by centuries of tradition and cautious negotiation, now faced a dramatic transformation unlike any before in its long history. The ancient halls that had echoed with careful words and polite debate began to resonate with new energy, a powerful mix of old wisdom and fresh resolve. The arrival of humanity had not just disrupted the Council's ways, it had forced it to evolve, to rethink what diplomacy truly meant in a galaxy facing unprecedented challenges. The humans, steadfast in their principles of strength and clarity, did not abandon their core beliefs. Instead, they began to learn the subtle art of balance, combining their directness with a new respect for dialogue, understanding that true power was not just in force, but in knowing when to listen and when to stand firm. This blend of strength and negotiation gradually inspired other species, many of whom had grown weary of endless compromise that led nowhere. They saw in humanity a model of honest determination that demanded respect without surrendering to weakness. Slowly but surely, a new way of working emerged within the Council, one that honored the diverse cultures and histories of its members, while embracing the reality that peace required more than polite words. It demanded courage, clarity, and the willingness to defend what mattered with unyielding resolve. As this new approach took root, the Council itself transformed into a more effective and united force. Long-standing rivalries began to ease as species found common ground in the shared goal of survival and prosperity. The ancient protocols, once rigid and slow, were adapted to allow quicker responses to crises without sacrificing fairness. Committees, formed to combine traditional diplomatic skills with the decisive actions that humans brought to the table. This hybrid system was not without its challenges. Some delegates still resisted, clinging to the old ways or fearing that too much power in the hands of one species could lead to domination rather than unity. But these voices grew quieter as the results spoke for themselves. Conflicts that once dragged on for decades were resolved more quickly. Threats that might have spiraled into war were contained before they could spread. The galaxy began to feel safer, stronger, and more connected. Humanity's role in this new order was clear, but humble. They did not seek to control the Council or impose their will, but rather to contribute their strengths while respecting the voices of others. Their example showed that rejecting the old diplomacy did not mean rejecting peace. It meant forging a future where peace was stronger, more resilient, and earned through honesty and strength. This shift extended beyond the Council chambers and into the lives of millions across countless worlds. Stories spread of human ambassadors who could listen deeply yet speak firmly, of soldiers who defended without cruelty, and of leaders who inspired unity through clarity of purpose. These stories inspired hope and confidence, giving people a sense that their galaxy was entering a new era, one where cooperation was built on respect, not weakness. Yet beneath this hopeful surface, the galaxy remained vigilant. The ancient empire that had threatened destruction was contained but not destroyed, a reminder that peace was always fragile and had to be protected. The new order required constant effort, compromise, and courage from all members. It was a work in progress, a delicate balance between strength and dialogue that demanded patience and wisdom. In this evolving landscape, humanity stood as both a symbol and a guardian of change, a species that had challenged old assumptions and helped the galaxy find a better path. Their journey from outsiders who rejected diplomacy to leaders who redefined it was a testament to the power of resilience and adaptation. The Council's future was no longer guaranteed by tradition alone, but was shaped by the honest, unyielding determination of its members. As the stars shone brightly over countless worlds, the galaxy united not by weak compromise but by mutual respect earned through strength and clarity. This was a new galactic order, one born from challenge and conflict but sustained by the courage to change and the hope for lasting peace. Humanity had proven that rejecting old ways was not an end but a beginning, the start of a stronger, more united future for all species who called the stars home.